Hello students, we are going through another term, that is symbolism. This particular term is, as we have discussed in the modern literature, the term is also studied. This is a modern days phenomena. This particular term invokes the the poetry, the literature, as well as some of the modernist trends that come up during the modern literature. As we have discussed some of the features of the symbolism or symbols in the basic sense, we have seen that a symbol carries some meaning. Any movement that do have some kind of symbols and they connote the interlaying meaning of the object. It helps the writer or the author to discuss and to exemplify the meaning of and deeper significance of the meaning to the wider perspective and to make it appreciable for the for the readers. And as we have discussed in symbol, any or suppose we have nature, we have natural background, we have rivers, we have rising sun and setting sun, the day, the night, the earthly, say, bodies around us or in the universe, sun, moon, they also connote some kind of meaning. The natural objectives, the human actions, the human behavior helps us to connote from that perspective. So, we have discussed the public symbols and private symbols. Public symbols that are very easy to understand. Public symbols that we see in the public at large means that are known to everyone. Just like a rising sun, setting sun, these may be called conventional symbols or public symbols. The rose, the crimson color, the red color, the black color, the white colors, these are public symbols. But at the same time, there is private symbols. Means the author or the poet uses his understood meaning deeper in his consciousness. And the object of the consciousness deeply rooted in the meaning is conveyed through the words in the form of word in the poem. So these thoughts or the image or the symbol stands for private symbols because it is from his own psychology. So likewise, we have seen the private symbols do helps us to understand the meaning of the text in a better perspective. So symbol it will be noted here. See, Coleridge, romantic poets, various romantic poets in the romantic era often use their private symbols in their poetry. Shelley is a good example who made repeatedly use of symbols. The morning and evening star, the boat moving, winding caves, they carry the meaning. The conflict between serpent and eagle. So like this, we have seen the symbols that are always been part of literature. William Blake, however, exceeded all his romantic contemporaries to use the persistent and sustained symbolism. A coherent system composed of symbolic elements, both his lyric poems and his long prophetic religious poems. In 19th century, the two friends Herman Melville and Nathaniel Hawthorne, who associated themselves with the use of symbolism. The prose of, say, the prose structure, prose of Emerson and Thoreau, poetic theory, and practice of Poe carried the meaning of the symbols. Their, their symbols were derived from the divine typology in the Puritan tradition. So, in the literary movement, when a series of symbols are used by the writers, it will be called as symbolism, because symbolism is a type of a movement. It indicates a movement. So, this movement designates a group of French writers beginning with Charles Rimbaud, Paul Verlaine, Stephen Mallarmé, Paul Valéry, Baudelaire, and he based his symbolic mode of his poems on the example of American Edgar Allan Poe, especially on the ancient belief in the correspondences, also between the material and spiritual worlds. His body layer put this doctrine, everything form, movement, number, color, perfume, in the spiritual as in the natural world is significative, reciprocal. The techniques of the French symbolists were exploited by the private use of symbols in the poetry. Such a rich symbols were used throughout Europe, in England, in America at the same time. Uh, The, the major contributions, say, from the author Siemens, who wrote the symbolist movement in literature, that furthermore expedited the symbolism. Ernest Dawson, as well as W.B. Yeats, Ezra Pound, Dylan Thomas, E. E. Cummings, Wallace Stevens were major symbolist poets. And this theory we find are more useful for your purposes. So, major symbolist in the Germany can be called as Stefan George. Modern period, as we have seen after the decade of First World War, was the sudden rise. It was expedited by the psychological, say, experiments that come up during this period. As we have seen, William James and Henry James, the two brothers, wrote their experiments in psychology, in the principles of psychology. And Henry James, who wrote psychoanalytical type of novels and poems, short stories, that brings us the influence of psychology and the use of symbolism. Certain motifs they exploited, and it was further on carried on by the symbolist writers of the time. In we have seen T.S. Eliot, W.B. Yeats, James Joyce in his world famous novel Ulysses, a portrait of the artist as a young man. W. Yeats and T.S. Eliot may be called the greatest poets of uh, modern symbolism. to indicate the disillusionment of the life in the contemporary modern civilization. He carried the deeper significant meaning in the West land. This uh, epic type of poem, it's a poem of greater significance. It deals with the vaster civilization. The structure of the poem is in the five sections, and these sections tells us the degenerated disillusionment of the modern contemporary world. W.P. Yeats, along with T.S. Eliot, also contributed a great deal with his private symbols. His mythical, legend, and occult studies that created a kind of an ambience and inspiration for W.P. Yeats to promote the symbolism in his moment, in his so-called writings. W.P. Yeats, who greatly contributed through his vision and the significance of the phases of sun and moon and its significance in human life, carried the meaning of the the deeper significance on or the type of nature or dispositional qualities of a human being that that cast the symbolism to the different perspective, different arena. Some of the works of the symbolist in their settings, and agents, their actions, as well as in the objects they refer to. So, instances of this persistent symbolic procedure occur in lyrics like Byzantium poems, Dylan Thomas's sonnets, and longer poems. So, along with this, we have seen that all these greatly contribution towards the symbolism and symbolist movements. Dylan Thomas, who also called as the radio orator, who used to recite his poetry on BBC radio channel, and he used to earn, but his Fernhill and Jones are deeper, ultrawise by all light, are significant symbolic poetry that we find. At the same time, it was W.H. Auden and subsequent writers who contributed to the symbolist movement till the Second World War. Symbolism was at its peak of its development in English literature, and that is what we have seen this, the use of symbolism as, as a technique we have seen ruled the world of the literary production in the 20th century British literature and as well as American literature to the larger perspective, to the larger area, and that we have seen the mark of the symbolism. So here, this particular term and this discussion will help you to get some idea. I would recommend you to go through W.H.C. Hudson's book. At the same time, a glossary of literary terms by M.H. Abrams, which every English student must study as a Bible. Every English student must have this book so that we can get the gist of our training and gist of our syllabus, because almost all the topics are covered in M.H. Abrams' book. So with these words, I would recommend you to go through this and prepare. You can take the screenshot if you wish to read this. You can take a screenshot of these videos. With these words, thank you.